Thomas, Newt, Winston, and Gally had always been an inseparable group of friends. Their bond was forged through years of shared adventures, mischief, and the occasional spooky exploration. On one chilly autumn evening, as the four friends gathered in Thomas' attic, a discovery was made that would change their lives forever. It was Newt who found the old, dust-covered mirror. Tall and ornate, it stood in the corner, covered by a faded, moth-eaten cloth. "Hey, look at this," Newt called out, his voice echoing in the dimly lit space. Thomas, always curious, was the first to respond. "What do you think it is?" he asked, approaching the mirror. "It's just a mirror," Gally said dismissively, but Winston, ever the cautious one, felt a shiver run down his spine. The mirror was strange, not just in its antiquity, but in the way it seemed to absorb the light, casting a dark and ominous reflection. Thomas, unable to resist, reached out and touched the glass. Instantly, a cold, electric shock ran through his body, and his reflection rippled as if the mirror was made of water. "Did you see that?" Thomas whispered, stepping back. The others nodded, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Let's see what's behind it," Newt suggested, his curiosity piqued. Together, they pushed the mirror away from the wall, revealing a small, hidden door. Heart pounding, Thomas opened the door, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. "We have to check this out," he said, his voice trembling with anticipation. Winston hesitated, glancing back at the attic. "Are you sure about this? It feels wrong." But the others were already descending the stairs, and Winston, not wanting to be left behind, followed reluctantly. As they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a room that seemed identical to the attic above, but with one eerie difference. The room was filled with mirrors, all reflecting different versions of themselves. "This is weird," Gally muttered, his reflection grinning back at him in a way that made his skin crawl. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The mirrors began to glow with an unearthly light, and the reflections started to move independently, stepping out of their frames and into the room. "We need to get out of here," Winston shouted, but the reflections blocked their path, their eyes glowing with a sinister intelligence. Thomas' reflection spoke first, its voice a twisted version of his own. "You have entered our world, and now you belong to us." Panicking, Thomas and his friends tried to find a way back, but the reflections were relentless. Each step they took was mirrored by their doppelgangers, who seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment. Newt, thinking quickly, grabbed a shard of broken glass and slashed at his reflection. To his horror, it had no effect. "What do we do?" he cried out, desperation in his voice. Winston, his analytical mind racing, realized the truth. "We need to break the mirrors. It's the only way to sever the connection." With renewed determination, the friends smashed mirror after mirror, each shattering with a deafening roar. The reflections screamed in agony, their forms dissolving into shadows. Finally, with one last blow, Thomas shattered the largest mirror, and a blinding light engulfed the room. When it faded, they found themselves back in the attic, the hidden door sealed once more. Breathing heavily, they stood in silence, the weight of their ordeal settling in. "Let's never speak of this again," Gally said, his voice shaking. The others nodded in agreement, but as they left the attic, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that their reflections were still watching, waiting for another chance to escape. The friends tried to return to their normal lives, but the experience haunted them. Thomas, Newt, Winston, and Gally found it hard to forget the sinister world behind the mirrors. They avoided mirrors as much as possible, and when they had to face one, they couldn't help but watch their reflections closely, searching for any sign of the malevolent entities they had encountered. One evening, about a month after their terrifying adventure, Thomas received a frantic call from Newt. "Thomas, you need to come to my house. Now." "It's happening again." Newt's voice trembled with fear. Without hesitation, Thomas grabbed his jacket and rushed to Newt's house. When he arrived, he found Winston and Gally already there, their faces pale with worry. Newt led them to his bedroom, where a large mirror hung on the wall. It was vibrating slightly, a faint glow emanating from its edges. "I thought we destroyed them all," Winston said, staring at the mirror in disbelief. So did I, Newt replied, but this one, it just appeared in my room yesterday. And now it's acting up. Thomas stepped closer to the mirror, feeling the familiar cold sensation. We need to figure out why this is happening and how to stop it for good. As they stood there, the mirror's glow intensified, and the room was filled with an eerie, humming sound. Suddenly, the glass rippled, and their reflections stepped out, grinning wickedly. "We missed you," Thomas' reflection hissed. "Did you really think you could escape us?" Panicked, the friends backed away. "We need to break it," Gally shouted, grabbing a chair. But before he could swing it, the reflections raised their hands, and an invisible force threw Gally against the wall, knocking the wind out of him. "No, we need a better plan," Winston said, helping Gally to his feet. "There has to be another way to stop them." Newt, thinking quickly, remembered something he had read about in an old book on folklore. "Salt," he said. "We need salt. It's supposed to have protective properties against evil spirits." Thomas ran to the kitchen, grabbing the salt shaker. He returned and began to sprinkle salt around the mirror. The reflections screamed, their forms flickering and distorting. "It's working," Newt exclaimed. "Keep going." Thomas poured more salt, forming a complete circle around the mirror. The reflections writhed in agony, their glowing eyes dimming. With one final, anguished scream, they were sucked back into the mirror, which shattered into countless pieces. Breathing heavily, the friends stood in the wreckage of Newt's room. "Is it over?" Gally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think so," Thomas replied, though he couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from the end. Winston, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. "We need to research this. Find out why these mirrors are appearing and how to destroy them permanently." The friends agreed. Over the next few weeks, they delved into ancient texts, consulted with experts on the paranormal, and pieced together the history of the mirrors. They learned that the mirrors were gateways created by a dark sorcerer centuries ago, intended to trap and control souls. Armed with this knowledge, they set out to find and destroy any remaining mirrors, using salt and other protective measures. They traveled to abandoned houses, ancient ruins, and hidden caves, always one step ahead of the malevolent reflections. As they continued their quest, their bond grew stronger, forged in the fires of their shared ordeal. They knew that as long as they stood together, they could face whatever horrors lay behind the mirrors. But deep down, they also knew that the battle was far from over, and that the reflections would always be lurking, waiting for their chance to break free.